I am the Space Quest historian. Let's finally kick off this new foul year of our space lizard overlords by talking about a little-known series of games called Space Quests. Now, you'll be forgiven for not having heard of them, so if you want to get up to speed on the 6 games in the franchise, I made a little series of videos called the Space Quest Primers, which tell you everything you need to know in, if I do say so myself, quite manageable bite-sized chunks. There should be a little link to the playlist in the top right corner of your screen right now, and I'll also put a link to them in the video description. Now, it should come as no surprise that I am, as my moniker would suggest, quite fond of Space Quest, but for this video, I thought we'd flip the script a bit and talk about the ways in which these games viciously dicked us over. One of the key elements to the success of the Space Quest series was that they made failure fun. Usually in adventure games, especially other games made by Sierra Online, leaping headfirst into danger and getting yourself killed resulted in the game giving you a stern talking to and admonishing you not to do that again. But Space Quest made death fun, to the point where you, as the player, would find yourself going out of your way to get your main character killed, just to see what funny description or hilarious animation you'd be rewarded with. But nobody's perfect, and Space Quest does have its fair share of "oh come on" moments, where the game either suddenly ramps up the difficulty curve to that of a near 90-degree angle, or just soft-locks you because fuck you, that's why. And you have to remember, some of these games came out before we could just go online and look up a walkthrough to see what we were missing, which meant that players who fell for any of these malicious shenanigans were stuck, possibly for ages and ages, trying to work out what they did wrong. This was the age before objectives lists and hotspot highlighters, kids. Some of this shit was just brutal. So, without further pointless meandering, here are my picks for the top 6 ways the Space Quest games have dicked us over, one for each game. Let's dive in. Well, actually, let's remember to take a deep breath first and then dive in, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start with Space Quest 1, The Sarian Encounter from 1986. There's certainly no shortage of dick moves in this game. Some of them fall into what I'd consider the brutal but fair category, like piloting the skimmer across the desert without hitting any of the oncoming rocks, which represents a very jarring shift into arcade-style gameplay where sheer primal reaction time becomes the deciding factor between life and death, or having to run circles around this rat bastard spider droid who has a nasty habit of teleporting straight into your face regardless of where he was on the screen you just left. There's a mechanical reason for that, of course, but that doesn't make it any less stressful if you get stuck on an impassable piece of the background with this little explosive ball of excrement on your ass. The VGA remake from 1991 even introduced an extra middle finger mechanic to this guy by having Rogers sometimes trip over his goddamn feet while he was being chased, leading to a very predictable and very frustrating untimely game over. But the really vicious stabs in the back comes from these moments where you can outright softlock yourself. The most infamous of these is the glass shard puzzle. When you crash land on the planet, a piece of your windshield falls off and lands in front of your escape pod. It's not visible, you just have to walk up and inspect your escape pod, and thereby be told that there is a shard of glass in front of you. If you don't pick this up and you get all the way to the elevator that takes you to the underground caverns, you are now shit out of luck because you need that shard of glass to disable these laser beams, and the game won't let you go back up to the surface to go and get it. And the game isn't about to let you take your time and leisurely explore the surface area in any great detail because when you're on the surface, you're either getting hounded by this aforementioned little asshole, or you're simply dying of thirst under the brutal heat of the desert sun. Another puzzle that requires you to look around for an invisible inventory item, this time a survival kit that's inside the cockpit of your escape pod, but again, invisible to the naked eye unless you explicitly tell your character to look around the interior of the pod first. And it doesn't stop there. While you would have to be fairly unobservant to miss picking up the data cartridge from the library that the scientist dude explicitly tells you is there, you'd be more forgiven for forgetting it a second time if you happen to want to take a gander at what's actually on it. Once you clear the desert cavern section, you're given the option to pop the cartridge into this screen and have a read. This is a required step in order to finish the game, by the way, because it tells you the self-destruct code you need to use on the star generator at the end of the game. But you'd better remember to take it with you when you're done reading, which you have to explicitly instruct Roger to do after you're done, because otherwise, you're locked out of the game's true ending. If you don't have this thing in your inventory by the time you finish the game, your whole planet of Xenon will throw you a hero's parade only to tell you that, sorry, you've still managed to doom everyone to a fiery death because we kinda needed what was on that cartridge to keep our goddamn sun from exploding and killing everyone. Kind of a bummer, I think you'll agree. But you won't even make it this far if you leave your skimmer unattended in front of the spacebar, because once you return to this screen, some asshole will have nicked it. Or if you take this inquisitive alien salesperson up on his first offer to buy the skimmer off of you, in which case you'll miss out on acquiring a vital item. Both will softlock you, but the sales alien one is a little more insidious because you won't know you've missed out on something until much later in the game, whereas the skimmer getting stolen kinda tells you fucked up straight out of the gate. So with all these various methods of having your progress impeded by circumstances you couldn't possibly see coming, which do I think is the absolute worst one? Well, the Glass Shard is definitely the most infamous one, because if you've never played the game before, this is the first instance where you'll come to the horrid realization that sometimes this game doesn't play fair. But my vote has to go to the data cartridge because it's so easy to forget to pick it up after you've read it, which I will reiterate is a required step in order to finish the game. And if you forget to pick it back up, you are basically told that, yeah, you may have technically finished the game, but boy did you fuck up regardless. Which, given how many weeks, months, or even years you spent getting all the way up to this point, just feels like a pretty savage kick in the teeth. Now, for more savage teeth-kicking, tune in next time when we will tackle Space Quest II: Volhal's Revenge from 1987, a game where you literally only have to go 2 screens into the game before you can soft-lock yourself. I'm the Space Quest historian. Please exercise caution when inserting sharp pieces of glass down your pants, and until next time, I'll see you around the Chrono Stream. Bye!